It was a draft class no one was impressed with. Scouts and analysts agreed the 2025 NFL Draft was one of the weakest in quarterback talent in years. Yet, surprisingly, the night was still filled with drama. Drama centered around Shedeur Sanders. From his dominance on the field to his NFL-ready skills, Sanders was arguably the most exciting QB option available. So why did team after team pass on him?
2025 NFL Draft is now officially open.
As 5 different quarterbacks were selected throughout the first 3 rounds, his name was glaringly absent. Could all 32 teams have seen something the rest of the world missed? Or was Sanders' slide fueled by something far more complicated? This is the story of the most disastrous NFL draft slide ever.
The 144th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Shedeur Sanders, quarterback.
Shedeur Sanders' journey from promising high school recruit to top NFL prospect began at Jaxson State, where he wasted no time making an impact. In his freshman year, Sanders threw for 3,231 yards and 30 touchdowns, earning the Jerry Rice Award, an honor never before given to a player from a historically black college or university. The numbers were impressive, but it was the way he commanded the field that set him apart. His poise and decision-making quickly made him more than just Deion Sanders' son. He was the centerpiece of a resurgent Jaxson State program. Building on that momentum, Sanders' sophomore campaign elevated his profile even further. He completed over 70% of his passes, threw for 40 touchdowns, and led Jaxson State to another dominant season. His leadership and ability to deliver in key moments earned him the Southwestern Athletic Conference Offensive Player of the Year award. By the end of his second year, Sanders was no longer just a standout in the SWAC. He was a fixture in national conversations about the next wave of quarterback talent.
Sanders pressured, he's going to step up. He's got plenty of daylight in front of him. It's going to be a race to the end zone. Sanders at the pylon.
The move to Colorado marked a turning point. Leaving Jaxson State and following his father to a Power 5 program brought new challenges and a much larger spotlight. In his first game with the Buffaloes, Sanders set a school record by throwing for 510 yards and 4 touchdowns against TCU, a top 20 team heading into the season. The performance was a statement. He could produce at the highest level of college football, not just against smaller programs. That debut, broadcast nationally, erased doubts about whether his Jaxson State success would translate. He followed up with a gutsy win over Nebraska, leading a second-half comeback and further solidifying his reputation as a clutch performer. Sanders' junior season at Colorado reinforced the idea that he was a top-tier NFL prospect. He finished with 3,230 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. His accuracy and composure under pressure stood out, and he was named the Pac-12 Newcomer of the Year. Analysts praised his maturity and ability to read defenses, often describing him as pro-ready. ESPN's Mel Kiper Jr. consistently projected Sanders as a top pick, even comparing his skill set to some of the league's best young quarterbacks. Sanders' final year at Colorado was a mix of impressive production and visible challenges that shaped his NFL evaluation. He threw for 4,134 yards, delivered 37 touchdowns, and kept interceptions low with just 10, showcasing his ability to consistently move the offense and protect the ball. His leadership helped guide Colorado to their most successful season since 2016, solidifying the program's resurgence on a national stage. However, he was pressured frequently, enduring 42 sacks that highlighted concerns over his pocket presence and decision-making speed. While he wasn't a finalist, Sanders finished 8th in Heisman Trophy voting, reflecting recognition of his impact even if he didn't crack the very top tier of college football awards. This final season solidified Sanders as a top-tier prospect while underscoring the areas he needed to refine to succeed at the next level. Off the field, Sanders became one of college football's most marketable athletes.
And Sanders ducks out of it. Another magician-like maneuver, and he hits a man downfield. It's Miller.
I think he's down.
He's not down. Off to the races. Miller to the end zone.
High-profile endorsement deals with Gatorade and Tom Brady's Brady brand highlighted his national appeal and underscored the growing influence of NIL in shaping college football stardom. His visibility extended beyond his play. He was a constant presence in sports media, interviews, and social media, always projecting confidence and embracing the expectations that came with his last name and his on-field accomplishments.
I get off social media personally and let my brother Deion Jr., the Well Off Media account, let him run it in my YouTube
Throughout this rise, the story seems straightforward. A quarterback with a proven track record at multiple levels, a strong arm, poise in big moments, and the pedigree to back it up. His performances against top competition and his ability to shoulder the weight of heightened expectations made him a fixture in early first-round mock drafts. Most analysts agreed that Sanders' blend of production, leadership, and marketability made him one of the most intriguing prospects in the 2025 class.
6 yards. Sanders goes deep once again. This time it's caught.
But as the draft approached, the tone around Sanders began to shift. Some scouts started to question how his game would translate to the NFL. They pointed to the 99 sacks he took at Colorado, wondering if he held the ball too long or struggled with pocket awareness. Others noted that while his highlights were spectacular, there were stretches late in the season when he missed opportunities or took unnecessary risks under pressure. The conversation, once dominated by talk of his ceiling, now included questions about his floor. By the end of his junior year, Sanders' place among the top prospects seemed secure, but the scrutiny was growing. The same traits that made him a star were now being re-examined as potential weaknesses. As draft season arrived, the narrative around Shedeur Sanders was no longer just about his achievements. It was about whether teams truly believed he could be the answer at the next level. That uncertainty set the stage for a dramatic shift in perception that would play out in the months leading up to the draft.
Sanders and the Buffaloes pay it off. Here's Sanders looking. Sanders winding up. He's got him in. Touchdown!
Instead of the buzz that usually surrounds a top quarterback prospect, the conversation around Shedeur Sanders in the weeks before the draft started to shift. Teams that once saw him as a top 5 lock began to reassess. The drop in his draft stock wasn't sudden, but it was steady. Mock drafts moved him down the board, and the tone of scouting reports grew more cautious. By draft night, it was clear that teams in need of a quarterback were looking at other options. The question was no longer whether Sanders would be a top pick, but why he was being passed over at all. The most persistent concern among scouts was Sanders' performance under pressure, specifically how he handled pass rushers. During his final 2 seasons at Colorado, he was sacked 99 times. While Colorado's offensive line struggled, that number was hard to ignore. Scouts dug into the film and noticed a recurring pattern. Sanders often held the ball too long, waiting for plays to develop rather than making quick decisions. His average time to throw was 2.96 seconds, which would have ranked among the slowest in the NFL for starting quarterbacks in 2024. In a league where pass rushers close in fast and windows disappear in an instant, that tendency raised serious doubts about his ability to adapt.
Sanders and the Buffaloes pay it off. Here's Sanders looking. Sanders winding up. He's got him in. Touchdown!
Arm strength was another area where opinions diverged. Sanders was praised for his accuracy and touch, especially on intermediate routes, but scouts questioned whether he could consistently make the big-time throws required in the NFL. He was described as a touch rather than power thrower, and there was skepticism about his ability to fire passes into tight coverage or threaten defenses vertically. Sanders' completion rate at Colorado, an impressive 70.1%, showed his efficiency, but some evaluators wondered if the system masked limitations in his ability to push the ball downfield or deliver with velocity under pressure. His athleticism, while above average, didn't stand out in a class loaded with quarterbacks who could threaten defenses with both their arms and legs. Sanders had shown he could escape the pocket and extend plays, but he wasn't viewed as a dynamic dual-threat quarterback. With other prospects flashing more obvious physical tools, teams started to question whether Sanders' skill set would translate as smoothly to the next level. The context of Colorado's offense made the evaluation even more complicated. With a weak offensive line and a limited running game, Sanders was often forced to improvise or rely on quick, short throws. While this showcased his ability to process and react, it also made it difficult for scouts to project how he would perform in a more traditional NFL offense. Was he adapting to his team's flaws, or were those flaws exposing limitations in his own game? The uncertainty lingered as teams tried to separate the player from the circumstances. Meanwhile, other quarterbacks in the 2025 draft class were gaining momentum. Cam Ward, Jaxson Dart, and Tyler Shough each saw their stock rise in the final months before the draft. The New York Giants, for example, traded up to select Dart despite extensive scouting of Sanders. The Saints opted for Shough, and the Seahawks picked Jalen Milroe, each team citing traits like arm strength and athleticism as deciding factors. The league's appetite for upside and raw tools meant Sanders' polished but less flashy game was suddenly less appealing. The pre-draft process didn't help Sanders' case. He chose not to participate participate in combine drills, a move that left teams with fewer opportunities to assess his physical traits and competitiveness alongside his peers. Reports surfaced that he didn't fully engage in pre-draft installs, sessions where teams test a quarterback's ability to quickly learn and execute new concepts. For a position so closely linked to preparation and adaptability, these decisions raised eyebrows. One executive described Sanders as having an unrealistic view of his value, hinting at a disconnect between his self-assessment and how teams viewed him. In a crowded quarterback class, even small doubts could tip the scales. On draft night, the hesitation became obvious. Teams that might have considered Sanders in the early rounds passed him over, opting instead for quarterbacks with higher perceived ceilings or more dynamic athletic profiles. The Cleveland Browns, who eventually picked Sanders in the 5th round,
with the 144th pick, the Cleveland Browns select Shedeur Sanders, quarterback, Colorado,
had already selected Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd. Their general manager later explained that fit comes into play, alluding to the broader concerns that had come to define Sanders' evaluation. The effect was cumulative. Every team that passed reinforced the idea that Sanders was too risky a bet for the early rounds. By the time Sanders' name was finally called, the narrative was set. Teams had made a conscious choice to prioritize upside, arm talent, and adaptability, even if it meant overlooking one of college football's most productive and marketable quarterbacks. But as the dust settled, a new question began to emerge. Was Sanders' fall through the draft really just about football, or did something else influence how teams saw him? Questions about Shedeur Sanders' draft position quickly expanded beyond his tape and stats. As teams weighed their options, a range of non-football factors started to carry real weight in front offices around the league. It was clear that Sanders' profile, both on and off the field, came with complexities that not every organization was willing to take on. One of the most striking aspects of Sanders' college career was the way he built his personal brand. He wasn't just a quarterback. He was a national figure, regularly featured in commercials and social media, and the recipient of major NIL deals with brands like Gatorade, Beats, and Brady. This level of visibility set him apart from most prospects, but it also created hesitation. Several teams questioned whether Sanders' commitment to football could be overshadowed by his off-field obligations. The added spotlight, especially for a player who might not start right away, made some executives uneasy about potential distractions and the media attention that would inevitably follow. The role of Deion Sanders in his son's journey was another point of discussion. Deion's involvement brought undeniable benefits, exposure, connections, and a high standard of preparation. But it also raised concerns for NFL decision-makers. Some executives directly stated that Deion's presence may have hurt Shedeur's draft stock. They wondered if Shedur would be able to adapt to an NFL locker room and coaching staff without his father's guidance, or if his development had become too closely tied to playing under Deion's system. While Deion's support was intended to help, the perception among some teams was that it complicated Shedeur's transition to the professional ranks.
Have started every game in their high school career, every game in youth, every game in college.
Sanders' approach to the pre-draft process only added to these questions. His decision to skip the NFL Combine workouts drew attention, as the Combine is viewed as a key opportunity for teams to evaluate not just athletic ability, but also a player's willingness to compete and engage in a high-pressure setting. Reports also emerged that Sanders was selective during team interviews, showing less enthusiasm with organizations he wasn't interested in joining. For a league that values preparation and adaptability, these choices raised doubts about his work ethic and openness to coaching. NFL teams have a long history of caution when it comes to players who bring a large public profile or strong personality to the table. The league's culture often rewards conformity, and franchises tend to avoid extra attention unless it's paired with clear, immediate results. In Sanders' case, his marketability and public persona became risks in the eyes of some executives, especially given the uncertainty about his readiness to start from day one. ESPN analysts noted that teams were hesitant about his stardom and whether his cultural fit would mesh with the expectations of an NFL locker room. There was no explicit suggestion of bias, but rather a reluctance to embrace a player whose presence might challenge the league's traditional approach to leadership and team dynamics. Some observers saw Sanders' slide as evidence of the NFL's slow adaptation to the realities of the NIL era and the new landscape of college football. As one executive put it, his draft position was proof of NFL cluelessness about how to handle players who arrive with established brands and significant public followings. The league's conservatism, while rooted in a desire for stability, may have made teams more likely to pass on a player who didn't fit the standard mold, even if that meant overlooking his production and leadership. By the time the draft ended, it was clear that Sanders' fall was not the result of any single factor. Instead, it was a combination. His decision to skip the combine, questions about his interview approach, concerns over his off-field profile, and the shadow of his father's influence all played a part. The Browns' move to select him in the 5th round, after already picking another quarterback earlier, highlighted both the uncertainty and the opportunity that surrounded Sanders. They were willing to take a chance where others hesitated, banking on his upside and the possibility that the doubts surrounding him would prove unfounded. The story of Shedeur Sanders' draft slide offers a window into how the NFL evaluates talent in a changing era. As the league grapples with new realities, social media, NIL deals, and heightened scrutiny, players like Sanders test the boundaries of what teams are willing to accept. The next chapter in his career will determine whether those concerns were justified, or if passing on him early will become another lesson in the unpredictable world of the NFL draft. For the Browns, selecting Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round was seen as a calculated risk, a true lottery ticket with potential upside. He enters a quarterback room that already includes Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dillon Gabriel, all of whom bring different levels of experience and skill sets. Sanders will need to adapt quickly, improve his decision-making under pressure, and prove he can handle the demands of the NFL if he wants to earn playing time. Now the question shifts to whether Sanders can seize this opportunity and outperform expectations. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Will Shedeur Sanders become the ultimate draft steal, or will the concerns teams had about him prove justified? And if you like this video, you'll love our documentary about another major storyline coming out of the 2025 NFL Draft. The Giants trading up to pick Ole Miss QB Jaxson Dart. Stick around for that video. All you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.